In 2006, work started on the regeneration of Bermondsey Square. However, before building could commence, the developers had to discover what ancient remains lay underneath.
This is a site of a Bermondsey Abbey. It's a scheduled ancient monument. And what that has meant is that we've gone to a great deal of effort, the archaeologists in tandem with the developers and the main contractor, Galliford Try, to preserve in situ as much as we can of the actual fabric of the Abbey. It's the masonry remains. They've been revealed, recorded, photographed, and then they've been covered back over again. We have done this so that we know where the modern foundations are going and they don't damage the existing archaeological remains.
Nobody expected to see quite what we've got here. You know, the level to which the walls survive, actually having upstanding parts of the church is quite stunning. And having worked on those earlier excavations myself, I never thought I'd actually get to see the church revealed in the manner in which it has been. As far as it goes, I think the developer on this site has been extremely responsible, and you know, as part of the planning process, they knew that they were going to have to do archaeological work here, but they've been very accommodating to us, and you know, they have been waiting for 8 years now for us to clear some of the areas at which they can try and build on.
The archaeological dig illustrates perfectly the historical timeline of the buildings from medieval to present day.
What I'm trying to show you here is how the archaeological sequence builds up in the ground. So what my foot is resting on is the gravel surface. That's actual walking around surface, and we know that the gravel surface is earlier than the gatehouse. Cutting through the gravel surface is a post hole. The material that seals it, the post hole and the gravel surface, okay, probably laid down in the medieval period. You then have the demolition or construction layer of chalk. Above that you have the 16th century material. Then you have the 18th and 19th century material in a big broad band where you can see the coal and the brick and the mortar. Above that you have a line of gravel which is your makeup for this concrete surface, which is actually the bedding for the cobbles, which is 20th century, which is finally capped by a layer of tarmac.
The first mention of the area by name comes in the early 8th century and relates to a man, Bermond, and his island next to the River Thames. His island became the site of a church, which lasted until a Viking raid, when they must have destroyed it, as they did across much of England. In the 11th century, an abbey belonging to the Cluniac monastic order was built. The order were a branch of the Benedictine monks. The Cluniacs take their name from a place in eastern France called Cluny, which is famed by an abbey founded in the early 10th century. At this time, the area was an open field outside London, with an abbey much like Westminster Abbey today, with smaller buildings around it. So the old parish church, which still survives, was the equivalent of St Margaret's of Westminster.
Well, it seems to have been founded by someone we call Alwyn Child, who was a city notable. He was probably somebody who'd made his money in the city, just as people do today in the currency markets and so on. And he thought he'd give money to found a monastery.
The monastery itself was founded in the last years of William the Conqueror, and the land in Bermondsey was given to it by William II Rufus. The Cluniacs enjoyed nearly 5 centuries as a thriving monastery until they were dissolved under Henry VIII in the 16th century. However, the foundations still survive today.
What we're looking at is the remains of Bermondsey Abbey, of the Abbey Church. This medieval church, though, isn't just one phase of building. So we're looking at 3 distinct medieval phases of building of a church. which will then be demolished in 1540, around 1540.
The sites were often handed over to some of Henry VIII's courtiers, and in the case of Bermondsey, much of the land came into the hands of Thomas Pope. And he was the one that appears to have pulled down the abbey and built himself a mansion. It remained as a country house for a few decades. Then, in the 1550s, it went to a slightly grander courtier, the Earl of Sussex. Then it decayed, and like a lot of the properties in the area, it was divided into tenements and workshops and lingered on in various states of decay until the early 1800s. However, the grounds had been in continual use as a burial site.
What you're looking at, obviously, at the moment in the ground, is a skeleton laid out in his grave. The skeleton isn't complete because it's been truncated by the later concrete foundations. So in the 19th century, somebody has built a building and they have just chopped through the skeleton. As you can see, the body has been laid out with head to the west and feet to the east. This is the orthodox way that Christians will be buried in the medieval period, and indeed until this very day.
This ancient site not only has medieval and Roman remains, an 18th century dissenters' cemetery has also been discovered.
We are now going back to find the full extent of the cemetery, which is being cleared at the moment by forensic archaeologists who are removing the human remains. The bodies will be lifted and they will be washed, recorded for age, sex and trauma on the skeleton, but eventually will be reinterred in East London Cemetery.
Next to the square were the gateways, the one that led into the square and the one that stood across Abbey Street, and that in turn mirrors roughly what it had looked like in the Middle Ages.
What you're looking at is the remains of a medieval gatehouse that was built perhaps in the 12th or early 13th century and stood until the beginning of the 19th century. This is if you like, the real medieval foundation for this gatehouse. The gatehouse is called the Great Gatehouse or Inner Gatehouse and was entrance to the inner precinct of Bermondsey Abbey. The reason why the gatehouse remains and no other part of the monastery does is because the gatehouse is a useful building.
In this period, many artists drew the gateways, and that helps create how they would have looked. Because of Bermondsey's closeness to the River Thames, its histories have always been intertwined, and from the 1800s there was a worldwide network of trade along the river, the main industry being cargo handling on the many wharfs and docks, and this in turn created other industries, most notably the leather trades and food processing.
Obviously some of the big firms that were involved in food processing became household names, like Pete Freen's Biscuits, the Courage Brewery by the present Tower Bridge was the first original Courage Brewery, Sarson's Vinegar.
By the mid to late 1800s, the area was at its peak of development. Every square foot was covered in bricks and mortar, factories and houses. It was very heavily populated, more so than it is today, and that remained the pattern until the Second World War. The Blitz changed all that. Apart from destroying large areas, including factories, a lot of people went to live elsewhere and children were evacuated. Many never returned. No one wanted the land after the war, and the square remained empty until the antique market moved there from Caledonian Road in North London. It is still there today. In fact, it remains a focal point for the square.
Calling for work from various customers since 1957.
I started here when I was 16 years old. which is now 23 years ago.
I've been trading here since the early 60s, so over 40 years of age, man and boy.
About 10 years now, although she's been at it for, I hate to say.
I've been here just over a year, so I'm a new person.
I think the future will be good because the $1 million developments are coming. They're going to build a big hotel and they promised us that we'll be underneath the hotel and the market, the antique market will always be here.
I'm very interested because obviously I'd like to keep coming down here, and even though I am 85.
To me, Bermondsey Antiques Market is to antiques, as Wimbledon is to tennis or Lord's is to cricket. Having an old market in a brand new setting won't be easy, but it's a hell of a challenge to everybody. But if in 10 years from now there's a thriving market in a really well-designed development, I'll be happy.
I prefer it to be a market rather than a trendy market.
The best case is we get a covered market out of the wind and the rain with some smart stalls, not these things that we put up with at the moment, and good parking facilities.
I know they're going to build restaurants and a hotel and a cinema. What it means for me, I don't know. I really don't know. I hope that I can still stay here.
This is my favourite market and we'd like to support it, and we've been promised that in the future it's going to be fantastic, so you've just got to hope for the best.
And a lot of people that have thought that Bermondsey had died will find that we're not dead, we're alive and kicking, and we're going to be kicking for many, many years.
And although the antique market has survived long after the Second World War, most of the general industry would not be so fortunate, and the final decline of heavy industry and docks began.
By the 60s, a lot of firms were starting to move out, partly because they had no land to expand. Their premises were very old. They were in streets which were designed for horse-drawn traffic.
By the 1970s, there was a huge exodus of firms leaving London, and by the late 70s, what had once been a thriving industrial area had become a shadow of its former self. One resident who has seen many of the changes is George, who has had his barber's shop in nearby Bermondsey Street for nearly 40 years.
Industry around here, chocolate factory, tea factory, metal factory, jam factory, lot of leather companies, and of course now, you know, all these places are luxury flats now.
The medieval foundations have caused the developers much food for thought as they continue to design ingenious solutions.
What the archaeologists are doing here is conducting a watching brief on the digging of the service runs which will feed the electric supply into the new build. And in the process of doing that, they've discovered more medieval walls which are part of a medieval Bermondsey Abbey. The wall behind me is a medieval wall about 1 metre high, resting on its medieval chalk foundations. We're building up the picture of what the Abbey would have looked like, and this is another jigsaw piece that goes into that puzzle. What it means is that the runs have to change a little bit. We can't just cut through these medieval walls, we have to try and go round them.
Once the new build was up and running, a decision had to be made as to what facade would be erected while construction took place.
The idea behind the painting session today was to get loads of local people down, people from Bermondsey, people from Southwark, Camberwell, all the local schools, to get them to come down and do a bit of painting.
Kids from local schools and various activity clubs joined art students and international artists to create a variety of weird and wonderful images to brighten up the square.
We're painting a picture of like loads of things that we like. I get lots of ideas and I just like drawing and painting.
I like the star and all the dots because they're just big and so colourful.
I like painting the spots and the ghost because I just like painting them bits.
Just came to do some live painting. This is one of my characters called Sober Monkey. It's part of the Order of the Apes. It's a series of collections I do by myself, so I thought it would be interesting to see it on a bigger scale.
They said like you can just come and join in painting, so we just said yeah, we'll just do some stuff. It looks wicked. I mean, it's better than some plain boards just in the road, I think so, yeah.
I think it gives you like an opportunity to like express yourself and people to kind of know what you're doing. Plus it's on the legal side, so.
Mark Wigan is an international acclaimed artist who came to join in the fun. Once the boards were painted, they were erected all the way round the construction site.
Well, I started live painting in the mid-80s. I moved over to New York about 1985-86 and I was working with Keith Haring and got commissioned by Andy Warhol to do some painting out there. We've been commissioned to come in to do some painting to brighten the area up and disguise the building work that's going on over there. Beasts and bugaboos, that's what I call them. And then I put them onto lots of different media. But I think art is vital, a kind of vital aspect for the community. I'd rather see arts actually in these kind of settings in the community rather than just being in a rarefied atmosphere of an art gallery. So much better to actually have it here on the street and people responding to it. So I think it's vital to have art in regeneration areas.
Just had a quick look and I think it's a really good idea, and the artists are all still pottering around, so you can have a little bit of a talk with them, so it's a bit more personal than just going in a gallery and seeing art on a wall.
Well, I think art plays a big role in regeneration because that sets people's minds off and it's easier to relate to than maybe politics, although those two are certainly related. You should never forget the importance of art.
At the end of the day, a group of local artists chose their favourite painting.
We chose it because the way the artist used the wall to go straight into the floor, the concrete, and I thought that was quite an interesting way of using the image.
A nice, happy colour combination. It's a nice and cheerful piece.
And for me it was a sort of mixture of the media using stencils as well as hand-drawn sort of element. It was really good use of different types of media.
It's really fun, it's a real fun thing for people to do it, like everyone gets in the sort of creative atmosphere and sort of soaks it all up. It's really, really cool.
So we think there should be more events like this sort of for communities to have a go at sort of doing work.
I think it's really nice for people to feel like they can get involved in their sort of surroundings and make statements about where they live and
change their environment.
Yeah,
have a hand
really,
in doing that.
I think that's very important for local people to be able to do that.
The building is reaching completion and the finishing touches applied. Even the antique market has moved from their temporary home on the building site back to their permanent home in the main square.
Before anything started, it was just a piece of derelict land that was uneven, not well kept, and during the work it was a building site.
It's been very good because the council have been excellently giving us a bit of a discount and everything's been all right. Everybody's got on pretty well.
We were moved from pillar to post for a year and a half, nearly 2 years.
I nearly got hit by a stall that took off in the wind a fortnight ago. I was lucky.
Noisy, but otherwise I think it's been fine. I think the people who are doing the development, they've certainly made way for the market and they kept it going, which has been brilliant.
I'm absolutely staggered that the market has carried on during building work.
Oh, well, I think it's very nice indeed. They're nice looking buildings.
I personally like quite a lot about it. I love the lighting. Connecting three buildings at roof height, I think is terrific.
Oh, I think it's looking fantastic. I think the developers have done a fantastic job.
It's a lot nicer now. 10 times, 100 times. It's much nicer now. It's lovely now.
I personally like it. I think it's a very tasteful development and it lends itself to a square. with the townhouses round as well. And when the hotel is fully functional up there, the it's going to be a big balcony and people having their coffees over there. I think it'll be a great atmosphere.
Now we're in a new place, and with a £300 million hotel development, Bermondsey Market is going to be better and better.
I think the future of the market is assured. I can't see why not. I can't see why it shouldn't carry on into the future.
We find it's very, very pleasant down here. The traders are my friends, and I will continue to come here until I peg it.
I think once everything is finished, the hotel's up and running, there's the cinema, there's shops, whatnot. It would be brilliant. I think it'd be great. I think people like it and people want to come in.
I think it's a feather in the cap of Southwark Council, the builders, the archaeologists, the traders. We've all mucked in and got along together, and I think that's a heck of a success story. I mean, you know, where else in the world has there been a market and the market's invariably closed down, been a brand new office development, you know, and commercial premises. But we're still here. We haven't fallen out with the builders, they haven't fallen out with us, you know. It's been a great success story, and I wish people would celebrate it.
So we've got a lovely atmosphere, the market's lovely, and gentlemen, I've got to pack, I've got a long way home.
This part of London has seen layer upon layer of history and people come and go, from the Romans to the Saxons, from factories and docks to apartments and fashion boutiques. It's astonishing that Bermondsey Square has managed to survive, as it represents the old Abbey courtyard from the Middle Ages and has now once again become a thriving public space.